Welcome to What's Happening. I'm Michael Locke, Executive Director of the Harwich Conservation Trust. With me here today, on my immediate left, is Marcus Hendricks. Welcome, Marcus.
Hello, how you doing?
And far left, Todd Kelley. Welcome, Todd.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here to talk about some interesting walks, Native American history, early colonial history walks, some wildlife behavior and biology, as well as some natural history woven in there as well.
Yes.
Taking place in June,
Yep.
and then another walk in July we'll get to in a moment.
Right.
Let's focus first on the June walk.
Certainly.
June 22nd, Saturday, June 22nd, 9 a.m. in Barnstable. Partnership between Harwich Conservation Trust, Barnstable Land Trust, and each of you, you being the two walk leaders. This walk is called A Walk in Iono's Woods.
Yes.
That's very interesting right there. It sort of piques one's interest.
Okay.
Who was Iono?
Well, he was a Sachem that would have been known at the time of first contact here. In fact, Bradford would have had interaction with him. So he was actually a younger man, though. They were pinnacle, their headmen or sachems of communities. So Aspinet would be of Nauset culture. And that's down east of the Bass River. And that was really the cultural power of down east of the Bass River, if you will. With Iono being right at Barnstable. And then also a man, Conacom, at Bourndale. And he was probably the senior of them. And he comes up in history where actually Monomoyuk, Mataquasan and Monomoyuk, goes to him for advice. So they're important men within communities. Communities are not isolated, they're overlapping. People are interrelated or marrying, moving about. Actually have, we probably think that they don't have automobiles and such, so they're just stuck. And they're really mobile, very mobile. And word would get out too. Communication was really rapid. And the instance was where Iono was that Bradford, there was a troublesome boy and families on the Mayflower, and it was the Billingtons. And little John Billington kind of wandered out of Plymouth. This would be 1621. And some of the elders in the tribes, in fact, your cousin Kitty said it about kicking, people just kind of kicking him down the road to the next community. And that was just kind of in jest. But what it was, he ends up at Nauset. To me, that signifies that the people safeguarded the boy, and they made sure he got to Nauset, to Aspinet. So it was actually Monomoyuk, this is current-day Chatham area, South Orleans, South Harwich, East Harwich, and they sent messengers to Plymouth. So he knew about where the boy was, and that's because the native people told him that. And so he set out in the shallop to go gather him, and he got off of Sandy Neck. And if you've never been out there, it's like, oh yeah, it's just across the bay, but if the wind and storm is up, you're not going anywhere. You're stuck. And that's what happened, is they got as far as Sandy Neck. They had to anchor and tough out the storm. And so as decorum would have it, because Bradford understood this, is that you went to the headman and you went and saw him and you talked to them. And that's what he did. He came into Barnstable and he met with Iono, and Iono said, yeah, they would have exchanged, had drink, maybe smoked tobacco and stuff. It would have been very cordial and very proper. And then he would have said, yeah, we know where he is. He's with Aspinet. And so the next day, Bradford gets back on the boat and goes to present-day Boat Meadow, Rock Harbor in Orleans and the East Dam line. And there's Aspinet already coming out, presenting the boy on his shoulders, and the boy's adorned in shells and stuff like that. And he presents them to Bradford. So that means not only did the natives notify Bradford of where he was, but they would have known also that when Bradford came to Iono, that means word went from there to Aspinet, while Bradford was still at Barnstable.
All by word of mouth.
Yeah, it would have traveled that fast. So Aspinet knew to come out and greet him. So he was there ahead of him. So that's they're pretty mobile.
So these overlapping territories across all of the current day towns that we know of, like you said, Nauset territory, Monomoyuk territory being out in Orleans and Chatham. Nauset must have been Eastham, Wellfleet
Eastham,
area.
Wellfleet. Punanakinet is actually is the community of Wellfleet, but Eastham actually is Nauset. We, as a kid, always accepted it was Nauset was Orleans. They were the schoolboy rivalries, but it's South Orleans was actually Monomoic territory.
And Marcus, so INO was a sachem, and a sachem, that's a leader, is an elder. Tell us a little bit about that culture, the elders.
So we had sachems, we had sagamores, chiefs, medicine men, medicine women. Different cultures have shamans. They're spiritual, cultural leaders. They're also, there's different clans and clan mothers that, you have to, you seek guidance and you go to them for structure in the community. With the vast networking on Cape Cod, you had, they call it Old Kings Highway, 6A. You have Route 28, 28A. Those are all major highways that the native people would have, connected their culture and their traditions.
Those are ancient.
Yeah, those are ancient.
paths.
Yes, ancient trails. People know them as ancient trails, and along those ways were different communities and different different families that resided along that trail, and that's how they were able to go from Manomet, Pocasset, Katamet, all those areas, and then even they would take different trips over to the islands and visit the other relatives by a boat that's called a Mashoon, and different ceremonies and cultural relations throughout the different communities were very vast on Cape Cod.
A lot of connections. Interesting. So my understanding is that for this walk, takes place in Barnstable, right? When folks register, it's $20 per person when they register at harwichconservationtrust.org, the website, then they'll get a registration confirmation email with directions to the start location in Barnstable on Saturday at 9 a.m., June 22nd. And the terrain of this walk is a little different from your other walks, right? A little more difficult. It's more of an intermediate walker terrain.
This is, and again,
What are we talking about?
I actually keep trying to coin a phrase, and that's down east of the Bass River, and that's because in my time it was, and all the way back to time immemorial, it was always known that the lower Cape is east of the Bass River. You're down Cape. And so those kind of words and things have been vanishing, but the terrain is different, and it's all about culture on the terrain, on the landscape. So I grew up in Chatham. Falmouth was the other side of the universe, and it's a different culture there, really, of old families and such. But in Barnstable, you're really at, you're on that high moraine and the high ground. And with the foliage, we probably won't quite see Cape Cod Bay, but you can see it from there. And it's also where the groundwater is. And so the people would have, and we'll talk about this on the walk, about going out to the shore, as Marcus mentioned, the spring thaw series that we do, following the water, following the heron, and then coming back into the interior in the winter. And so there would have been well-established communities around where the water was. And they would have been, interconnected. It wasn't just, they weren't isolated. And so,
it's like, if you can picture a semi-nomadic community where everything is based off the seasons, where they live, where they're going to harvest flora and fauna. And, like Todd said, the later fall and the winter, they would be in the interior. And then, spring and summer to be out on the shorelines, harvesting the bounties of Cape Cod. So, yeah.
So Saturday, June 22nd, a walk in Iano's Woods. Fascinating. Let's move to the July walk. A little bit different. Different part of the Cape, different geology, different Native American early colonial history, right? July 27th, also a Saturday, 9 a.m. start. Truro. The National Seashore, which will be an interesting experience. And tell us a little bit about that. I understand the title is High Head in the Highlands.
Right. So that's kind of me, and just a local pride over the Cape, and especially that part of the Cape, because it is different. The Highlands actually were, for European explorers, was a navigational point.
Oh, from
So
out at sea, they would
They would see 42nd parallel is actually the line that Christopher Jones followed for the Mayflower, but others did prior. That was the most direct route, and when they came to the cliffs of the Highlands, they knew it. That's why when we have a lighthouse there, Little Brewster Island, Boston's first, but then Highland would be next. And then when Chatham, they had to have the twins because it's a different shoaling out there off of Chatham versus Truro. And then, of course, when Nauset, you had the Three Sisters, and that would, because so you could distinguish. But on its own, Highland cliffs were identifiable. You could recognize it from this, and that's what Christopher Jones did. He knew he was on, when they finally spotted land, he knew he was right on time, right on target, even though they were supposed to go to the Hudson. So the Highlands it's a different spirit out there. It's really the real, I don't know, the starkness of Cape Cod.
Yes, move into that sort of more dunescape.
Yeah,
right?
well,
Heathland, coastal Heathland.
Yeah, Heathland, but it's also, Truro aren't dunes. Those are glacial cliffs.
Okay.
So at
Glacial
head of the
cliffs.
meadow, this is where province lands start. That is all coastal dune. But the cliffs eroded out of the cliffs, probably about 3 miles out starting, some 7,000 years ago. So, Provincetown's really rather young. But it comes from glacial mound that's 15,000 years old that's been deposited there. And it has a different glacial dynamic than the moraine of Barnstable. And I'll get into that when we talk with there. But for me, it's just really quite spectacular out there.
And the High Head in the Highlands, Marcus, tell us a little bit about some of the Native American history we hope to learn about on that adventure.
So that area as well, it's very close to Wellfleet. Having the cedar swamps really close by were very important for habitation sites. Building the homes, constructing the homes.
Is that what some call a Wetu?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
What is that? What is a
So
Wetu?
the Wetu is a single family home in the spring and summer with the cattail or bulrush mat covering, and then in the winter it's multiple families living in a elongated house, and that has bark covering. So this, again, back to the semi-nomadic culture of living. They would live in the interior and then focus more on the shoreline. Once the birds, the fish hawk comes home, comes back here, and then the migratory, the fish that come. I think it's interesting too that a bunch of the people that come out haven't been on the trails. We'll do a head count, say, who's been out on this trail, or they have, and then Todd and I will introduce things that they have actually passed by. The wealth of knowledge between Todd and myself is vast. And if we have the right questions, we can, explain, and explain what we have seen.
Right. So that's what these are, is they're really gatherings, and they are discussions. We're not just, blathering stuff to them. The people are actually interacting with their own stories, and it's becoming a part of the same story. Little tidbit of history, though, is Iano's mother, his people were Pamit.
Oh, no kidding. There's a
And
link
Pamit is
there.
Truro.
Even between the June 22nd walk and the July
Right.
27th walk at High Head.
So they're descendants. Typically with native societies is they're matrilineal communities, which means the women stay, the men move out. Kind of like the coyote, where the young coyote bucks out, breaks away from the family unit, and starts out mates of his own. And so Iano, being a man, came out of his ancestral community of Pamit.
Fascinating. So that walk, again, July 27th, High Head in the Highlands,
Right.
9 a.m. to 11, roughly, Saturday, in the National Seashore.
Yes.
Partnership between Harwich Conservation Trust, Truro Conservation Trust, and the two of you. Details, again, harwichconservationtrust.org. Folks can register online, and we can learn lots more about the Native American history, early colonial history, the interactions, and also wildlife and natural history, geology. Even.
Yeah, of course.
Well, we look forward to it. Thank you both very
Good,
much.
thank you.
Yes, thanks for being here.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
And thank you, everyone, for tuning in to What's Happening. Again, my name is Michael Locke. Happy to have here with us today Marcus Hendricks and Todd Kelley. We'll see you again next time. Thank you.